This week in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott announced his legislative priorities in his annual State of the State address.
Clearly, God has blessed Texas, and the state of our state has never been better.
We get insight into his top issues from State Senator Brandon Creighton, who talks about school choice.
And we're going to have school choice and education freedom for our families that need help the most.
And policy expert Jeremy Mazer, who addresses the state's burgeoning water crisis.
This is wonderful news for the Texas economic miracle.
Also, we share a pair of reports of water bills in the city of Houston with reporters Liliana Pearson and Maya Shea. Plus, we get the scoop from our political insiders, Court Kenning and Otis Evagaru, who share their thoughts on the state of the state this week in Texas. Hello again, I'm Tom Abrams. This week in Texas, we focus on Governor Greg Abbott's State of the State address, which he delivered to an invited audience in Austin. Abbott announced his priorities for the legislative session, and he also touted the state's economic outlook.
Texas is the blueprint for the future of America. We rank #1 for technology and innovation. We rank #1 for semiconductors that power things you use every single day. We created a space commission to boost space exploration in Texas from NASA to SpaceX to Blue Origin and far beyond. We added new business courts that swiftly deal with complex business litigation. Business is booming so much, we now have our own stock exchange, the Texas Stock Exchange. It will make Texas the financial capital of America. Clearly, God has blessed Texas, and the state of our state has never been better.
The governor also laid out 7 emergency items. 3 of the 7 were education-related. Chief among them, school choice.
That must pass.
During his 40-plus minute speech, Governor Greg Abbott outlined 7 emergency items, those issues that get priority standing in the House and Senate. They include investing in water infrastructure, career training, teacher pay raises, school choice, bail reform, a Texas cyber command aimed at fighting foreign hackers and cyber threats, and $10 billion worth of property tax relief. But it was this line that got a prolonged standing ovation.
We must pass school choice this session.
Abbott has long advocated for sending public money to private schools, suggesting that public schools are not the right fit for all students, and not all students can otherwise afford private educations.
Government-mandated schools simply cannot meet the unique needs of every student. But Texas can provide families with the choices to better meet those needs.
The Senate is poised to pass a school choice bill this week under the governor's emergency item declaration. But on day 1 of the session, the chair of the Education Committee, Brandon Creighton, told us he expected it to pass this session after it failed 2 years ago.
We have moms and dads all over this Capitol ready for their respective member to support that legislation. So overall, I absolutely believe it will pass.
Still, school choice, education savings accounts, or vouchers by any name don't sit well with everyone. Today in Austin, outside of a public school, Texas House Democrats held a press conference to denounce what they see as another effort to underfund public schools.
Greg Abbott is starving our public schools and pushing a private school voucher scam, which will take even more money out of schools like this one and put it in the hands of millionaires and billionaires.
I'm joined now by State Senator Brandon Creighton. He is the chair of the Education Committee, which put SB 2 to the full Senate. Senator, your thoughts on this bill and what it does for Texans?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. We're excited about approaching the Senate floor tomorrow with this legislation that we had passed 4 times off the Senate floor in 2023. We have our votes in the Senate this time around. I feel like we have the support in the House to pass this legislation as well. We're going to be the 32nd state in the nation to offer expanded school choice and one of a dozen states that offers the education savings account. Incredible opportunities weighted and prioritized for special needs kids and income vulnerable students that need help the most. And we're just couldn't be more proud to be offering this school choice opportunity to our Texas families, our moms and dads that need these options and these education pathways so that their kids can succeed in the way that they determine best on their behalf. So we're really looking forward to tomorrow in the debate on the Senate floor.
So I've read through SB2 and looked at some of the parameters. This is weighted toward low-income students, and there is additional money set aside for those with disabilities. Is that right?
That's correct. 80% of the Education Savings Account program and its funding is prioritized for special needs students and income vulnerable students. And we've been very consistent with that. That was the case last time around in 2023 when we passed the bill several times out of the Senate. And we're putting those students first, as we always do.
And tell me about the amount of money that you're looking to spend on this program. It says a couple of different numbers, a minimum of $2,000. And then if your child goes to a private school that is accredited, then it's $10,000, or for a disabled child, $11,500.
That's exactly right. So the $2,000 number would apply to our homeschool families. If a homeschool family submitted and was eligible and through the lottery pick was awarded an ESA, that's what they would receive through the program. Otherwise, a child, a student moving from public school to a private school opportunity, as an example, would receive $10,000 for the ESA. And if that student had a disability, $11,500. We chose those numbers because we took a look not only at what the average private school tuition in the state is, which would be in the upper 9,000 range, but we also watched closely and paid close attention to the average number that our public school students receive. And that published through Raise Your Hand Texas, that many of the teacher organizations rely on, is an $11,000 number per public school student across the allotments. And Texas Public Policy Foundation actually publishes a $16,000 number. So it's always difficult in this building where you come down on choosing specific numbers and thresholds, but we feel like that's very responsible as a launch.
One criticism has been from those who don't support it, that it takes money away from public schools and hurts public schools. Your response to that criticism?
Yeah, my response to that criticism would be Republicans in the Senate and in the House, Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, we wouldn't pass any policies that hurt public schools, right? We have a $96 billion public school funding effort with $8.5 billion new dollars for public schools when we normally are in the $2 billion range of new money for public schools. There are about a dozen states in America that don't have a total state budget of the amount of money, the new money that we're putting into public schools. Separately, this education savings account plan, that funding comes out of the surplus. It doesn't come out of public school funding. And it's very responsible in this large surplus that we have to use it in ways that, just like we're working in ways to help taxpayers recover some of that money, we're also working in ways to help our most vulnerable students in the state to have education opportunities and their parents to have options that they otherwise wouldn't have and haven't had before. So both of those are going to happen at the same time. An incredible lift for our public school teachers, an incredible lift for our public schools, and we're going to have school choice and education freedom for our families that need help the most.
When we come back, we talk about another of the governor's emergency items, water. I'm joined now by Jeremy Mazer with Texas 36. He's the Director of Infrastructure and Natural Resource Policy in Austin. Jeremy, tell me your thoughts when you heard the governor make water infrastructure an emergency item.
It was two thoughts, Tom. First, it was no surprise, but second, this is wonderful news for the Texas economic miracle. In the years leading up to now, we've heard a lot of water challenges that have been facing Texas, the need to expand our water supply portfolio and to fix aging, deteriorating drinking water and wastewater systems. The governor's message last night about making water infrastructure funding a priority is great because he's talking about what we need to do to make the infrastructure investments needed to continue Texas economic growth and this thing we call the Texas economic miracle.
Given the numbers of people who are moving to Texas every day and the increased stress on resources and on the state's infrastructure, is it too late to do something about it?
It's the best time to start investing in our water infrastructure is now. It is true that we've needed to have significant investments over the past few decades, but the best time to start making these strategic long-term investments in water supplies and fixing our systems is now. So the sooner is better than later. And it's great to see this messaging from the governor about making water infrastructure funding a priority in 2025.
I've seen you at the Capitol. I know you go door to door and you talk to legislators about what you think is needed, not just for water, but other infrastructure issues. But what if you had to place a dollar figure on this? If you had to tell legislators, this is how much we need to get started, what would that number look like?
We've told the legislature that in the long run, over the next 50 years, we need to spend just over $110 billion in addressing our water infrastructure challenges. A great starting point in 2025 is a $5 billion endowment for the Texas Water Fund, combined with a $1 billion per state fiscal year dedicated revenues to that fund, so we can have a funding stream that'll work for the years, if not decades to come, to address these water infrastructure challenges.
So essentially, provide the seed money now and then continue to fund what I guess would ultimately be sort of like an enterprise fund going forward.
That's exactly right, Tom. Let's do an initial seed capital investment right now so we can jumpstart working on these water infrastructure projects. But exactly like you say, let's have some dedicated continuous revenue going to the Texas Water Fund so we can do long-term planning and investments in the infrastructure that we need.
What do those expenses look like? Are we talking about fixing what's broken, adding more, a little bit of both?
It's all of the above when we look at it, Tom. We need to expand our water supply portfolio. This involves building new reservoirs, desalination plants, and even water reuse. But also, like you said, we need to pay attention to fixing a lot of these drinking water and wastewater systems that are broken, including in the Houston area. So some of that investment is going to have to go to infrastructure rehabilitation and repair.
I don't want to sound an alarm, but we have heard the word crisis used in the past, especially during droughts. Is there a water crisis in Texas? And is that why the governor is making this an emergency item?
Texas is very much near crisis. It really depends on what the drought's doing to us in any given year. But when we look at the data, we see that if we don't take action soon towards expanding our water supplies or fixing these systems, then we're going to have real crises, not only statewide, but crises that are particularly acute in regions of the state, especially those with high population centers such as Houston, Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio.
Good. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. Tom, I think what I'd add is what we're seeing from Governor Abbott yesterday in his State of the State remarks is extraordinary vision with regard to what is needed for the state to continue our economic miracle. And his prioritization of water infrastructure investment, energy investment, as well as workforce development really points the legislature on the policy direction needed to make sure we have the fundamentals in place for continued prosperity and economic growth. From our perspective at Texas 2036, the governor's comments were welcome and signals good news for the Texas of tomorrow.
Water issues take a lot of forms. It's not just about availability, but also cost. And our team at ABC 13 has been looking into billing problems in the city of Houston. We begin with reporter Liliana Pearson.
I hear something.
Miss Douglas Louise Gordon Cooper couldn't believe it.
Did I look shocked?
You sounded it.
I am.
Twice in 1 week, she was gobsmacked.
I said, oh my God.
Once, over receiving a $400 water bill.
I wanted to fall down on the porch. but I was afraid I hurt my hip again.
And then for how fast Public Works showed up to her house after talking to ABC 13.
The water company, the city of Houston, was sitting right there.
Gordon Cooper says the Public Works employee told her that something was wrong with her meter and it needed to be updated. I reached out to Public Works on Thursday and again on Friday. I'm still waiting to hear back any official communication on the meter or if the water bill will be fixed.
They need to do, and if they don't adjust it or something, I'm gonna tell you.
After making phone calls on her own and getting nowhere,
See my plate, isn't it cute?
she says she's grateful someone took the time to help.
I thank you. I just can't believe how fast all of this has taken place.
Since Liliana's report first aired, viewers like you have reached out about a plethora of water issues, and we've started to work through many of the tips. ABC 13's Maya Shea visited 3 viewers' homes and shares what she uncovered.
When Antonia Gray got almost a $700 water bill last Friday, she was distraught, and then she called us.
It worries me because I need to cook. My son need to be able to take baths and stuff like that, and I shouldn't have to worry about this. I shouldn't have to call you guys to get help for something that they should already be doing.
Antonia Gray isn't alone. ABC 13 also got called by Fannie Hanks, who says she owes several $100s.
I called for them to try to help me get it down.
You don't have a leak? You don't water your lawn?
Oh, Lord, no. I never water my lawn.
And Faye Regans, who said she paid last month's water bill, but it didn't show up in her statement.
I would like for them to explain to me, you know, like when the bill jump on.
In a city with millions of residents, the Public Works Department says billing questions can vary. In Faye and Fannie's cases, both appear to be related to billing cycles. Since we called, Faye's water bill has already been adjusted, and Fannie also got a return call from the city of Houston. But Antonia's case is taking more work.
It used to be about $40, $50. Now it's in excess of $200 a month now. Like right now, my bill is almost $700, and that's within the last 4 months. So that's just too much for me.
The city of Houston says her bills have been creeping up, which indicates there's a leak somewhere, and they will have to send someone out to check. The sooner the better for Antonia.
Anxiety, worry. My son has special needs, so I have enough on my plate to worry about without having to worry about. I've never ever had a bill this extensive before.
We'll keep checking back to make sure the bill adjustments happen the way workers say they will. And we have submitted an open records request with the city to learn how many water bills have been adjusted under Mayor John Whitmire. We'll keep you updated. But up next, our panel of political insiders give us their thoughts about the governor's priorities and his emergency items. Welcome back. Let's dive into Governor Abbott's priorities with our panel of political insiders. I'm joined by strategist Otis Evagaru and Court Kenning. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us again. I know you saw what the governor said during his 40-minute speech. What did you think of not only his priorities, but also the 7 emergency items?
Well, I mean, Otis and I both know this for the longest time. This has been done in the Capitol. It's Governor Abbott's the first one who's done this, I think about maybe 5 years ago or so, away from the Capitol, where you don't have frankly, Democrat scowl faces looking at you as you're giving these, talking about these issues. But really, I mean, we've kind of gotten away from what a true emergency issue is. Is school vouchers an emergency issue, or something that you want to have done early in the session to make sure you get it passed? Is some of the other items on his list truly emergencies? Water is, sure. Property taxes? I don't know. It depends on if you believe so. And actually zeroing in on Harris County and their taxing entity and how Harris County raised taxes 10% and gobbled up all of the savings that could have been had in Harris County. So it makes Harris County a little ground zero to the governor's speech on property taxes.
He's liked picking on Harris County recently.
Yeah, it's a whipping dog.
Yes. Your thoughts about the governor's priorities and the emergency items?
Yeah, no, I think it's always fun to be in front of 1,100 hand-picked people that can give you a standing ovation for every line that you put out there, even when they don't make sense. You know, I think we all knew what some of these emergency items was going to be. I mean, the Senate is going to pass SB 2, which is the voucher bill, on Wednesday when they convene. So that'll be very interesting for them. The biggest thing for me was education. And one of the things that the right loves to do is talk about schools for education and not indoctrination. Literally 5 minutes after, not even 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes after Governor Abbott said that, he talked about how genders are two, male and female, and that if a teacher teaches anything other than that, they should be fired. Now, if you go look up the word indoctrination, that is the epitome and example of indoctrination and not educating, right? School is supposed to be a place where it's a freedom of ideas. I kept hearing Governor Abbott talk about a freedom. But in the same breath, he's taking it away. And I think that that's going to be a big takeaway here soon, is that they have to be very careful about how they talk about these things. I was glad to see that he talked about water, which is a pressing need in the state of Texas. But he also talked about historic property tax relief that they've done in the past. If you talk to Texans, they are not seeing that relief. And, oh, by the way, you're seeing a lot of schools closed down in neighborhoods. So I think that Governor Abbott has a lot to reconcile and rectify in his state of the state. It's going to be interesting to see how the public receives it. I doubt much people watched it since it was 5 o'clock on a Sunday evening. But for some of us who are tuned and keen into what the Texas legislature is doing, it was a very fascinating speech to watch.
And you know, I was just right about we did $13 billion in property tax relief. A lot of that was gobbled up by either taxing entities or appraisal increases. And so, but that puts a systematic hole in the budget that they have to work around every session. If they don't deal with that $13 billion, that shift goes back to the taxpayers. And now they're talking about another $10 billion.
Right.
I mean, this is a significant amount of money that they're pulling out of the resources in other areas. I think it's right to give property tax relief, but if it's not long lasting, what's the public actually going to think? Or do they think the Republicans are not getting their job done? And this is the issue that is front and center. Yes, voters have said they want Republicans to make these decisions. Democrats are playing in, you know, maybe loosening up the stringent Republican viewpoint on things. But realistically, we have a job to do, and we have to get it done, or the voters are going to kick us out. Plain and simple.
Real quick, both of you, are you surprised, yes or no, that the governor did not make the border or immigration an emergency item, even though he did talk about it?
I think the emergency on that comes from, is Trump going to give us the cash to reimburse us? So it's not an emergency so much in Austin as it is in Washington.
Yeah, not surprised at all. I mean, and Governor Abbott talked about that, is that now they have a partner that can work with them on the border. Again, we'll see about that. We've talked about the border ad nauseum here, but again, that's going to be very interesting to see if the federal government's going to give that money back, especially with some of the federal freezes that has happened and taken place, and some of the cutting of funding they're trying to do at the federal government. President Musk and President Trump are going to have a difficult time trying to rectify giving money back to Texas to Governor Abbott when they're trying to cut spending right now in D.C.
He did that almost seamlessly.
Yeah, I know that was pretty close. But you know, realistically, you have an issue where you had the President Trump, you know, really on Inauguration Day, really tout the governor. I think there's a great partnership there, and we have a really good opportunity to have that support.
Gentlemen, thank you. And This Week in Texas, we'll be right back with some closing thoughts. That does it for this episode of This Week in Texas. We certainly appreciate you joining us. As always, you can watch all of our previous episodes wherever you stream ABC 13 or at abc13.com. Until we see you again, have a great week and be kind to one another.